Cobham Dairy is only one part of a really spectacular estate. It's a medieval estate in Kent, and it had its sort of great architectural moment when the big house was built in the 1580s during the reign of Elizabeth I. But the little dairy is part of an 18th century remodelling, very important remodelling of the whole estate, done by Humphrey Repton, the great landscape designer, and the building built by James Wyatt. So it's the sort of crescendo of development that happened over many centuries. And I'm here to meet our ambassador, George Clarke. Hi, George.
So nice to see you.
How are you?
Are you
Lovely
well?
to see you.
What a building, eh?
Isn't it wonderful?
Stunningly beautiful. Seen better days, though.
Really has. Even on a day like this, it looks pretty tragic.
So tell me more about it.
Well, it's a dairy, so it's one of those ornamental, extraordinary ornamental buildings of the 18th century, designed for literally, making cream and butter and so on, but not to be done by, servants out of sight,
Yeah.
but by the lady of the house. The countess from down the big house there would come and oversee the business of milk and butter and so on being dealt with, so cream being made, butter being made. It's a kind of one of those things that's very much of its time. There's such a vogue for it, and Versailles and all the great palaces of Europe, there were ornamental dairies, and the duchesses and the queens and so on would come and kind of play at being dairy maids. But as a consequence, it had to be really cool in here, because otherwise milk curdles. So it's tucked in deliberately here into the trees and so on behind it.
It's nestled in the most gorgeous spot, isn't it? You can just imagine that romantic notion of leaving the main house, wandering through the landscape and seeing this beautiful, it's a bit like a pavilion, really, isn't it?
And it was all really deliberately created as a kind of little sort of tantalising eye catcher. The architect James Wyatt, working with Humphrey Repton, the great landscape designer, to deliberately to make you think, oh, what's that, and be drawn to it.
And as humble and as small as it might be, because of James Wyatt being such a brilliant architect, I mean, he's one of my favourites.
Is he?
God, yeah.
Is he? Oh,
He's
good.
amazing, Wyatt.
Quite unfashionable in a way, but
Really unfashionable. He's also
guy.
one of those architects that went through that kind of incredible neoclassical period,
Yeah.
and then started dipping right into neo-Gothic.
Yeah, and this
it all
is the
changed.
best of his work, isn't it, when he goes Gothic?
Yeah.
I can take or leave the neoclassical stuff, but I think his Gothic stuff is just so delicious, isn't it?
This is a building that absolutely needs to be saved. But on the outside, I've just noticed, looking up close, you've got these little strips of slate. So the whole brickwork was clad in Welsh slate. Why is that?
Exactly right. So it's very, very technologically sophisticated. So the brick building, it's made of brick here, was then covered over with this skin, a very carefully shaped slate. And then the slate, you can just see some of it there, was given this whitewash so that the building would reflect any light or heat away from it, and it would stay cool inside.
Stay cool.
So it's partly a very functional thing to keep it cool, but it's partly also, obviously, a wonderful show-off thing to make this little jewel-like building all the more special and delightful.
Brilliant, isn't it? I mean, that is quite an innovative way of keeping the temperature internally of the building down.
Yeah, and it says something about also how special this building was, that all the care and trouble was taken. You can see they're shaped around the windows. Slate even curves, which is quite a challenging thing to do there.
Yeah,
but it's all come off. I mean, this is the problem. It needs to go back on, and that's going to be one of the kind of skills, challenges of the project.
Do you know, the craftsmanship involved in recladding the whole thing in slate and getting that curve across those pointed arches is going to be tricky.
But that, in a way, is sort of least of our worries. Come and have a look inside, because the situation gets rather worse. So you can feel the temperature dropping right down as you come in.
Go straight away, actually, can't you? It's much cooler inside. Did its job very well.
The building doing its job. But as you can see, it's really been totally sort of, torn out in the interior here.
What a space, though.
Yeah, so the way it works is that this is the central dairy room, and in the 1790s there was a shelf that went all the way around. You can see that little incision there, and that had marble on it, Carrara marble, and there have been great big, china settling pans and so on, and the cream would have been rising to the top and being creamed off. And then in the middle here would have been a kind of an urn with a big chunk of ice in it to help keep it cool. So everything was about keeping it cool, and only light up high there, and sort of, minimal light. Again, to keep the sort of environment.
But it's still quite decorative, isn't it? With these beautiful pointed arches on both sides and the really high ceiling. Beautiful windows at high level, actually. Feels like a chapel rather than a dairy.
Well, I think that's exactly the thing. So it was a funny trick building, because on the one hand it was doing its dairy job, on the other hand in the landscape it was made to look like some sort of intriguing little ruined chapel that, you know, might speak of olden times. But as you can see, there was once a wonderful plaster vault. You can see the profile of it there.
So you think this would have actually had a kind of vaulted ceiling?
Yeah, it definitely did. Look, can you see the ribs up there? Oh, wow. So the plan would be to put all that back, which would be pretty amazing, wouldn't it?
Incredible.
So it becomes this little kind of gorgeous little Gothic space. It's a really small building, so you know, we need to use all the spaces that we've got.
What will this be used for?
This will be the sitting room. Okay. So, you know, you'll come in here and then you'll have, you know, some chairs, but ideally a stove. The challenge is how to keep the character of the building but also make it work for use as a landmark.
When this is converted into a home, a space to live in, it'll be unbelievable, won't it? What a piece of history. Yeah. It brings together memories of so many different building types, you know, from being a chapel or a church, even like a thermal baths, you know, when you'd walk into a main hall and you'd have all these beautiful decorative arches around there. But to think of this Carrara marble going around that edge and it being a real process space for making. And you can see where they're doing some remedial work in the past. There's a big steel bracing bar, in effect, isn't it, running around the whole first floor of the building to just tie it all together.
Yeah, exactly. So some sensible things have been done to stop the building from completely collapsing, but they are only the beginning. And because of the building and what its character is, it's not a place that you want to leave in this sort of state. You want to get back what was so special about it in the 18th century. One of the brilliant things is that we actually have an amazing cache of historic plans. Yeah, Wyatt's own drawings for the building.
Oh my word.
So look, isn't that lovely? They're James Wyatt's own drawings.
And then you can see that vaulted ceiling in the room we're in now.
You can see the vault there. So it's obviously a cross section. And there's the bench that goes all the way around. You can see very clearly, and you can even show some detailing on the sort of legs of it, and the corbels here apparently bearing the plaster ceiling. Even
when you look at the detail on those drawings and the Carrara shelf running around, it feels like a kind of ceremonial chapel, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think I'm sure that was all part of the idea, and it's lovely because it means that although we've lost this completely here now, because we've got this sort of detail, you can make it back really confident that you are making back what was here.
It's so brilliant having that set of drawings, isn't it? And this is so there's the original plan. So the dairy space where we are now, and then you've got these kind of longer, thinner rooms wrapping around the main dairy space, which in some ways that's really clever because it would have made the central dairy even cooler because it's wrapped around by cloisters.
It's true, exactly that. It sort of encases it and keeps the warm air out. And actually what's interesting is that it's all open except for the bit behind us, which we're going to look at in a second, which is the one space which was actually inhabited by the dairymaid herself.
I love that. So you've got cloisters on three sides, 1, 2, 3, and then kind of living quarters for the maid.
So what our plan essentially is, as much as possible, to respect that. So we're going to make what was the maid's bedroom, the bedroom. Mm-hmm. We're going to make what was the dairy scullery into probably a room with a bath in it. Then we'll have the kitchen in the back section there, and then this main room will be the main room again, will be the sitting room.
We're so lucky, aren't we, to have a set of plans like that for this sort of building. They're unbelievably detailed. I mean, they're even dimensioned. Yeah. There's all sorts of notes on there. To have that full set of plans, elevations and cross-sections gives us the perfect documents to restore the building. Mm.
And then through here will be the rest of it. So if you just follow me, I'll show you.
It's a bit darker.
A bit darker. Right, so this is going to be the kitchen in here.
Wow, there's a job and a half, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be a sort of, you know, a long, not that narrow, but a long sort of oblong-shaped room. But of course, the great thing in here is the fact that we've got a huge chunk of this surviving plaster vaulting. And you can really see, look, I mean, how it's all put together here, and how flimsy it is. Really, you can see the laths there that have been plastered up, and then onto that have been applied these plaster ribs. So it's all a sort of stage set. Obviously, it's supposed to look like stone, but
it's going to be
clearly isn't.
I mean, the level of craftsmanship needed to bring this back is incredible, really, because you've got to form all the beautiful timber work. You can see where the old timbers, the curved timbers, have been set before. Yeah. All that will have to be replaced. Then it's going to be covered again, plastered, and then all of these tiny plaster details brought back in as well. It's a really intensive job, isn't it?
It is, and it's going to be made all the more so by the fact that we want to hang on to as much as we possibly can of this original stuff. So, in many ways it would be easier just to pull all that rather kind of knackered old plaster off and start again, but obviously we don't want to do that because we really want to retain it. So the art of it is going to be incredibly painstaking piecing in of new work with the old work.
Do you know what, as hard as it's going to be, what a joy for someone to work on this.
I know, I think it will be.
Absolute joy for someone to go, do you know what, I helped restore that building. I did the timber work or the plaster work or the paint and decorating. That's a real thing to celebrate, isn't it?
It is, and actually it's a really nice thing that with the apprentices programme we're now running, hopefully it will see young folk coming up in these trades beginning to learn from some of the old masters at how you do it, which is obviously one of the joys of these kind of projects.
Beautiful. This is not going to be an ordinary kitchen by any stretch of the imagination, is it?
It really isn't. It really isn't. And nor is this going to be an ordinary bedroom. If you follow me, I'll show you round the back. This was the little bedroom of the dairymaid. So her bed would have been over there, as our bed will be again.
It's a very narrow space, but very cute, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple little room, and because this is just a building for two, you're going to be inhabiting the whole building, and you're not sharing with anyone. So this is just going to be a bed in here with a little cupboard to put your lamp on.
Nice and cosy.
And it'll be lovely, and the view down to the house is absolutely spectacular.
Beautiful. I can't wait to see it finished.
The dairy's in a really bad way, and it has been in a really bad way for a long time. It's a grade 2-star listed building, which makes it one of a very, very small number of outstandingly important buildings, and it's on the Buildings at Risk register, and it's deteriorating, and there is no other lifeline for it. If we don't step in, it's simply going to deteriorate further, and it's very hard to see how it will ever be reversed unless we at Landmark can take it on.